the deckmaster system, two dash masters hooked together, synchronized. Whelen released the deckmaster along with the dashmaster in the mid-80s, and the idea was that you could add a second dashmaster to any existing dashmaster, and with a simple cable you would have the deckmaster, which is essentially just two synchronized dashmasters. So you would have four strobes synchronized, and you'd also have the ability to cut off two of them so that, for example, you could just run one color. The examples they gave were usually rear deck applications on either side of a third brake light inside the vehicle. So what's the breakthrough? What's the change from the last time I made a video? Well, it turns out the 4-wire plug coming out really only needs 2 wires between the two of them. Yellow and green exit one, and then they enter gray and brown on the other one. That means no matter which way you mix up the cable, the system will still work. But hooking up all 4 wires was the downfall of our previous design. So currently what we have is wires connecting the yellow and green on one unit to the gray and brown on the other, and then we have power and ground run to each unit, as well as the cutoff wire run to each unit. That's the way it was factory. I don't know what the cable looked like exactly, but it was a 2-wire cable, or two pins of the cable were for the synchronization out and in. You can see here each one only has 2 wires going into the synchronization side. And I did use the same switch that was sold with the system. Flipping the switch one direction causes just the dashmaster to activate, or the deckmaster to activate 4 strobes. Flipping it the other way cuts off 2 of those strobes. That's how the system was designed. It is true to form, and this is what it looks like before I put it back together. You can see the internals. There are 4 wires, and running between them there are 2 wires for the synchronization side. So why would we want to synchronize? Again, keeping light colors flashing at the same time to avoid making a blurry, disgusting purple or pink or whatever color mess. So you get that sort of definition by synchronizing them of like colors at the same time. You can switch which side flashes together just by switching the connection inside the housing. There's more than enough wire to put either side of the individual unit connected to either side of the power supply as you see fit. So in this case, it's flashing the outers together, and then it would flash the inners together. And I did that because that means it's going to have a blue side of the pattern or phase and a red side. Here, an unsynchronized red-blue is in the middle, and guess what we get? A purple, disgusting mess. So here is my original test with the system properly wired. I'm trying to make it hiccup by using the cutoff, which was what would kill it last time when all 4 wires were run between it. I'm not sure why the cutoff feature actually is what would hiccup it, but it was the easy way to make it fail. So this method of the 2 wires, the cutoff doesn't phase the system at all, and you're able to run, in this case, flash just the blue and cut out the red. You could do it opposite and flash just the red and cut out the blue. You could cut off 2 lights, but when you cut off 2 lights, the remaining lights flash together. So you end up with simultaneous flash. Essentially, you're just removing one side of the timing cycle. So in instead of removing, because they are identical, and the cutoff works on individual units, it's going to cut off the same part of the sequence. So you're blocking the trigger. You're still having power to these strobes, but the trigger pulse is blocked. So you're flashing two lights together against none lights. But when it's put back into normal mode, you're flashing two against two. And in this case, like I said, I chose to segregate this by lens color, blue or red, so that I didn't get a purple blurry mess, which I think is the intention of the product all along. I got them put back together. You might notice that the one housing on the left is much squarer than the one on the right. I don't know how long the square housing was offered, but the one on the left is a first year model, and the one on the right is a second year model. I don't know if it got put in the wrong housing later in its life, or if they actually rounded the housing out in the second year of this product's life. I know the housing got rounded early, but I don't know if it was in that quickly. So really, I've got the factory style switch off in the middle, full function in one direction, and single set together in the other direction. After packing all of this up, getting it put back together and building out the cable to the correct specifications and wiring up the switch, the final bench test is here, and I was happy with it. So after filming this short segment, I set about taking it into the collection or display room and doing some more filming. And you'll see also later that I did some filming against a set of non-synchronized red and blue to kind of show the difference in how it looks and why you would want to synchronize your two dash masters into a deck master. Aside from that, we could just have a lot more footage of the system finally working the way it was intended by the use of the switch that was intended. So aside from the dissimilar housings and the cord being bare, you pretty much have a factory set of dash masters made into the deck master system, as I set out to do in the first video. If you watched it, I'll link it. And I was very close, but this is the actual successful completion. So I filmed these lights in a variety of backdrops and circumstances. Well, it's actually all in the same place, but different backlighting, we'll say, before adding the set of non or asynchronous strobes for contrast. So there's some footage here for you to enjoy the system actually working before I add the two strobes that are not synchronized to show the difference. So you can enjoy my success, hopefully as much as I did, and I will chime back in at the section where there is some contrast. So we had talked about why even do this. Well, here's why. The two in the middle are not synchronized with one another. You have red and blue in the middle, flashing at the beat of their own drum. Gives a lot less color definition, kind of blurs the colors, makes the whole system appear to be purple blur versus an organized color scheme. So the whole intention of this product line was to allow you to synchronize, whether that be by color or location. In my case, I chose color. And this portion is just an example of how much better it looks when things are, in fact, flashing together by color and location. So I need to make a correction. In the previous video about this project, I showed this exact Dashmaster, which is a hybrid board generation 2, and I showed adjustment of the potentiometer, and I stated that that was adjusting the clipping. Many Whelen power supplies have a potentiometer to adjust both clipping and rate. The one that I was working on, the first generation, the one I was working on synchronizing, only had a clipping adjustment. This one only has a rate adjustment. Clipping is the overall amount to which the capacitors are charged, and rate is rate. And they can affect each other a little bit just by their nature, and the fact that if you fire too fast, maybe you can't get full energy to fire. But regardless, I said this was adjusting clipping. This isn't. This is adjusting rate intentionally. I don't know why the hybrid board Dashmaster second version only adjusted rate, and I don't know why the first only adjusted clipping, but that's just the way they were. So if we look at some edge power supplies, starting with this 1988, you'll see that you can adjust both rate and clipping. And that continues that way until Whelen hides the whole power supply inside potting material, and you can't get to any potentiometer that's there. Originally, the potentiometers had a little mark melted into them at the factory settings, but they were still very adjustable. By the end of the run, they were nearly melted in place, so you couldn't adjust them. I don't know if dialing them into the sweet spot became a thing they didn't want you to mess with, or they just figured it wouldn't be user serviceable, or they just wanted to do a better job of ensuring that no one would mess with it. But either way, this early 1988-ish double flash was adjustable in both rate and in power clipping, and you can kind of see that the rate is obviously more noticeable, but the power is noticeable too. So it just had to be tuned so that the little pilot light illuminated at the and you got the best of both worlds. So you had to tune both of them to get the maximum efficiency. This slightly later hybrid board version also has two potentiometers, one for speed and one for clipping, and it pretty much behaves like the earlier 1988 version. This is a 1990, I believe. It's a hybrid board, whereas the previous supply was not. It was a shelf components board. But the same thing is true. Adjusting rate and clipping are both possible, and they are not the same thing. I think on this particular supply, messing with the clipping was more noticeable, but the pilot light was also out on this one, so it might need repairs. It was also harder to dial in, but I had no pilot light to guide me, so that's probably why. But again, both adjustable. The next supply is another hybrid board from late 1991. Very similar to the previous one with adjustments for both rate and clipping. However, this one has a gray wire, which is rapid rate. What that wire does is it essentially bypasses or maxes the rate potentiometer and puts the power supply at maximum rate. And there's a disclaimer stating that the flash rate would be outside of SAE specifications, and that it may no longer meet its stated brightness levels. So by just changing that rate, while it is a cool, quick flash pattern, it's no longer within their specifications, which is why it was important for them to tune their power supplies. The inherent variations in the components they used caused the tuning to be necessary, which is why you would see both power clipping and rate adjustment in most power supplies, and why the Dashmasters started with just clipping and ended with just rate, I do not know. The fact that they didn't have both is strange enough on its own. But these edge supplies, they did have both, and they are independent variables that need adjusted together. Finally, we have the Comet Flash hybrid board supply, which is the last edge supply, I believe, before they encased the whole thing in a potting material. And this is Comet Flash, so quad flash, if you will. So it does have both rate and clipping adjustments, but they melted these things and covered them with some sort of clear coating so that you couldn't adjust them, which I did anyway. But even the slightest adjustment in rate or power clipping would cause the pilot light to stop illuminating, meaning essentially, for better lack of a better term, you're out of the sweet spot. So these had a very specific zone in which they were within the specified flash rate and were putting out the specified joules. So they didn't want you messing with this, and they went to great lengths to try to prevent it. And then following this generation of Comet Flash supplies, which were multi-pattern supplies, they really didn't want you messing with it, and it was, if it was there, it was buried underneath the rubberized or potting material, so you couldn't see it if it was there. Regardless, clipping and rate adjustment are not the same. Many Whelen power supplies have both. Usually when it just has one, it's clipping, but the Dash Master is an exception. The first generation had clipping only, the second generation had rate only. So my mistake. Hopefully this clears that up a little bit. And again, thanks to the individual that helped me do this project and come up with the information for the video. Check out elightbars.org for a similar discussion and other related topics. And thank you for sticking out and watching the whole thing, and have a great day.